As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long, and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. On LinkedIn, you'll have direct access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior-level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You will also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn ads also ranked number 1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Here at Sway Group, LinkedIn is a pivotal part of our day-to-day and is just absolutely vital for building relationships with clients and with our employees. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Content marketing, SEO, competitive research, advertising. Sounds like a large scope of work you need to get done. How about full digital marketing control over your business? SEMrush can be your right hand for that. It has over 50 tools and reports to cover any online marketing activities. No more switching from one service to another. Get a 14-day free trial and watch your business grow. Go to bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/SEMrushMPN.
Welcome to The Art of Sway. This is a podcast that brings you inside the world of marketing through the lens of influence. I'm your host, Danielle Wiley. Each week, through candid conversations with industry insiders, we will uncover how influencer marketing is making an impact across all consumer buying habits and is changing the way we talk to each other. Let's dive in. Adam Green is the founder and executive director of Rocking the Boat. Adam started the volunteer project that would become Rocking the Boat in 1995 during a semester off from Vassar College. Influenced by his experience teaching kids about the Hudson River aboard the Hudson River Sloop Clearwater, he developed a program that used the process of building and using wooden boats as a way to educate and empower young people from underserved communities. He has received numerous awards and accolades for Rocking the Boat, including an Echoing Green Fellowship, a Union Square Award for grassroots organizing, a Manhattan Institute Social Entrepreneurship Award, and in 2014 was named one of 25 international CNN heroes. Adam Green is one of my oldest friends. We were super close at Vassar in the early 90s and have lots of shared memories of our time there. Shortly after graduating from Vassar, Adam founded an absolutely amazing nonprofit, and he joined me on the podcast to talk all about the influence he has had on the kids they work with and on the boat building nonprofit world in general. Enjoy. Hi, it's so good to see your face, and I don't know why we don't do this for personal catch-up purposes, and I had to invite you to my podcast to see your face and talk to you.
Now it's so easy to actually see each other and have a conversation through whatever platform, but no, it's only when there's an actual reason for it. But so
I have known you for a very long time. We lived in the same dorm at Vassar, so we met in 91.
Fall 91.
Over 30 years ago, which is insane. You have done absolutely amazing things. So I, of course, know kind of like your whole background journey and how you got to where you are. But for our listeners who are not lucky enough to have been with you through some of that, you grew up in New York City, ended up at Vassar, which is where we met, and now you are the founder and executive director of Rocking the Boat, which you're going to talk all about. Why don't you kind of share a little bit of that journey, because it's just interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and it's neat to be sharing it with you because you were kind of there when it all happened. But so yeah, I grew up in Manhattan. Sometimes when I'm being a smart ass, if I'm allowed to say that, I'd say I grew up on a small island on the eastern seaboard of the United States. And people go, "Oh, really? That sounds so quaint." And I say, "Yes, But I say that not just to be a smartass, but because that is so much of the orientation that I want to bring the young people we work with into, which is that we're on either island or we're here on the mainland in the Bronx, but we're surrounded by water, and we wouldn't be here. None of us would be here if we weren't, and if it weren't for water. And water is such a powerful force in every sense, both very practically, but also metaphorically. And we use water in lots and lots of different ways. And I grew up being conscious of the fact that I was living on an island, and if I stuck my head out of my 11th story apartment building just far enough to not be very safe, I could catch a glimpse of the Hudson River. And we used to go sailing on a sailboat called the Hudson River Sloop Clearwater that Pete Seeger founded in the late 60s. And my parents were Pete Seeger fanatics, and therefore we got involved. And so I had a little bit of a taste of being on the water, but I don't come from a boating or sailing background at all. I think most of the people I talk to these days assume I grew up sailing, and this is just because a lot of people, especially our donor-based, do. But for me, this is nothing that I did other than this. Every couple of years we'd go sailing on Clearwater, and my parents were big into like camping and hiking and that sort of thing. So we did a lot of outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
But I was a city kid, and most of my outdoor time was spent in Central Park. And I think in a way, the work that I started doing when I founded Rocking the Boat was as much for me as it was for the young people I was working with, and both in exploring doing unique and different things that you wouldn't expect to be doing in the middle of a city, but also because of the impact that those things have, in the sense of feeling special, feeling unique, feeling like you've got something going on in your life that no one else does. And I think even for someone as privileged as I was and am as a white person growing up in upper middle class Manhattan lifestyle, I needed that sense of value and validation that I wasn't really getting even from as exclusive and elite places as Vassar College.
So you left, so we were at Vassar, and then you took a semester off. And that's kind of how this all, I mean, I guess it started as the seeds of it were planted in your childhood.
Right. But yeah, I took a semester off really because I wasn't getting anywhere in school, and I needed to do something that gave me that sense of purpose and connection, and ended up really by chance stumbling into this volunteer opportunity at a junior high school in East Harlem. The teacher there said he'd had a dream to build a boat, and wondered, he was a science teacher and had to teach science, but his classroom was a sort of a decommissioned shop class. So he had all these benches and tools that they weren't using. And he's like, I can take my kids somewhere else if you want to build this boat. And he gave me a set of plans from like a hobby magazine and some scrap wood that he'd collected from a construction site near his house in Long Island, and said, what do you think? I was like, I'd never done anything like that before, but I was sort of handy, and the idea of building a boat, that sounded pretty cool. So we did, and we built this little 8-foot dinghy over the course of about eight months. In that time, I returned to Vassar, and there was a moment, you were probably one of the people I had this conversation with, where people go, "Oh, you took a semester off, what'd you do?" And I was like, "This and this." And now I'm building a boat with a bunch of junior high school kids in East Harlem. And it was something about telling people what I was doing and seeing their reactions that made me go, "Oh wow, this is special."
Yeah, I mean, because the rest of us were like getting drunk, getting high, like going to class, sitting around. We weren't doing anything very significant. No offense to my college career, but
and the first 2/3 of mine as well. And I mean, I remember taking a ethnography class or something in the American Culture program that I was in, and part of our curriculum was walking through Poughkeepsie and having authentic conversations with people to learn about people in Poughkeepsie. Was just so unbelievably, I mean, like racist.
Like just stopping people on the street?
No, like going into a store and just chatting and having, it's just this very, very, we as a society have evolved a good deal since then. But I wasn't insulted personally, but just sort of outraged. At this point, I was going back to East Harlem once a week to accomplish two things. One was to go to therapy, and the other was my other form of therapy, which was teaching kids how to build this boat. And so I'd spend a night at my parents' house, and then do the boat building class and take the train back up to Poughkeepsie. But in doing that, I was walking into bodegas and buying Snapple iced teas probably, and having conversations with people, not deep conversations, more like, here's some money and thanks for the change. Those are authentic because they actually have a real reason for being. And it was valuable. I mean, and I felt this sort of, and I brought that up in the class, like that's, if you want to actually learn about community and be in contact with people and receive information from them, you can't just go and ask them. You have to actually have a genuine, authentic purpose for having that conversation. I think, so part of, going way off track here, but part of this for me was learning about people in a way that was not canned, and not that was based on something that was real, and the relationships that I cultivated with these kids in this school, and for that matter for the teachers, and just like this whole, I mean, it's so much of being at a school like Vassar is just this cloistered kind of little fantasy world, and being able to spend time with real human beings with challenging lives and responsibilities that extended beyond a paper being due was hugely valuable for me. Anyway, we launched the boat at the end of the school year in the swimming pool in the basement of the school, and it was just this amazingly inspiring moment. And none of us really knew what we were doing, but we were really splashing around in the pool and seeing these kids who had built this boat actually use it, and like the idea that you could create something that you could actually use and then, well, we weren't going very far, but used to go somewhere was really powerful. And I remember standing there in the swimming pool and room, whatever that is called, and going, like thinking metaphorically, we could be going a lot farther than just to the other side of the pool. And that's really where it started, and grown from building a very, very simple little boat and splashing around in the pool to now this is our 25th year. We serve about 4,000 people a year. There's a core of about 200 kids who are involved in a very, very intensive long-term engagement, starting in middle school into high school, and then beyond. We offer a whole series of alumni support services, and we do it all through these three technical mediums of wooden boat building. Why do we build wooden or any boats? We use them to do a whole range of environmental research and restoration and advocacy on our local river, the Bronx River. And then we also use them to learn and to teach sailing. And so we have a whole sailing education program that is run by participants teaching others how to sail. So
you guys you're based in the Bronx, and so are the kids just from the Bronx area, or do they come from all of New York City?
We are not exclusive in any way, but we're located in Hunts Point, which is a somewhat remote neighborhood of the Bronx, and a unfortunately very stigmatized neighborhood because of its pretty unfortunate history in a lot of ways. So I think the flip side of that is most of our kids are local because other people wouldn't want to send their kids here, which is really sad. And especially because it's so beautiful. It's a heavily industrialized and very, very poor neighborhood, but it's surrounded by the Bronx and East Rivers. And like I can walk down to the river right here and see osprey and herons and egrets sailing across the river, and it's amazing. So yeah, most of the kids are either from the immediate or adjacent neighborhoods or from the Bronx. We have a handful of kids who come from other places.
And it's primarily after school that they come.
So it's we run two broad, or maybe three broad areas of programming. The core programming, the program that we started building back when is our after school and summer youth development program. So that's the long-term engagement. And we have a team of 4 social workers who support 3 social workers and a college and career advisor who support participants throughout 4 years of high school and beyond. And that's basically March to December after school, and in the spring and the fall, and 4 days a week over the summer. But then we also run broader reaching public programs. So we run programs for school groups. We'll have schools coming for multiple sessions. Like we have one school that comes twice a week, basically all school year long. We do camp programs during break. So like we have a local middle school that's going to be coming down over February break and building a kayak at Rocking the Boat. And then they'll be continuing on because they're not going to do the whole thing in 4 days, doing after school programs twice a week, but as a school group, as opposed to our high school programs, which are individual kids sign up and it's not sort of through the school. Those public programs serve about 1,500 people a year. And then we run community rowing and sailing and bird watching programs on Saturdays and Sundays over the summer. And we'll, I think this past summer we took like 1,500 people out on the water, and I'm expecting that number to increase this year. So overall, I kind of use now that maybe we're back to scale after a couple of pretty darn funky years, to put it lightly, about 4,000. We touch about 4,000 people a year, but there's this core of about 150, 200 who get very, very long-term engagement support, and then in many cases act as the staff to lead the rest of the program. Our not very deep strategy to teaching people how to work is to employ them, rather than just to talk to them about how to do well when they get employed. And so we, along with the technical skills that we're developing, obviously, in all these 3 tracks, the huge focus is on training young people to be successful in the workplace. And this is their first opportunity to do that.
So you've been doing this for 25 years now, and I want to talk about kind of your influence outside of just rocking the boat, but starting with rocking the boat. I mean, you have some pretty impressive stats on where these kids end up going. I mean, it's more than just teaching them how to sail or how to build a boat. You're really acting as a support system in a lot of other ways as well.
Yeah. And I mean, we're very clear that we're not a workforce development program that is intending to place people in maritime or other related fields. But certainly we have kids who have gone. We actually have somebody coming in right after we get off. She's probably about 21 now, and she has been working as a crew member on New York City Ferry, which is the municipal ferry, has just passed her captain's licensure, and she's here so that I can sign off on her sea time that she did at Rocking the Boat. She will be the very first ever Latina captain among the New York City Ferry fleet.
That's
so
awesome.
That's pretty exciting. And we have a board member of ours who's a graduate, who's a union carpenter. That trade was one that she learned about through Rocking the Boat, and we helped to facilitate a lot of the pre-apprenticeships and so forth that got her there. But then we have people doing a zillion things. We actually, our annual appeal focused on two grads. One, Stephanie, who is a public defender for the Brooklyn Defenders, has had an amazingly challenging life and an amazingly successful one. Credits her time here in high school as a big part of that. Another guy, Terrell, he's an investment banker at Morgan Stanley. And that's awesome. Whether someone who's becoming a captain or an investment banker or a lawyer, those are all success stories. And I always feel like we have a lot of kids who are going into social, either education or social work, casework tracks. And I think so much of that is a big secondary part of our social work mission is to destigmatize social work. So for so many kids, the social worker is where you go when you're in trouble, or it's that kind of door at the end of the hall that you don't want to be sent to. And for us, social work is everybody is working with one of our social workers individually and in groups. And it's just a person to help you out in whatever way you need, and so we have a lot of kids who want to become social workers, and a couple of them have actually gone into social work school,
That's awesome, because I don't think enough. I mean, you read a lot about how the social work industry and teaching are really hurting for great people to come in. So, I mean, those are 2 occupations that need a little.
Yes, absolutely. And we do a very unique kind of social work here in that it's not clinic based or school based. It's much more integrated into activities. But I think it's a wonderful approach. And the other kind of field that people often come to me to talk about being inspired to go into is nonprofit entrepreneurship, which I'm not necessarily encouraging them to pursue. But I can off the top of my head think of like 4 or 5 people in the last year who said, I want to create a nonprofit like you have, and I'm like, hold on a minute, but and kind of dial them back to like, okay, well, what do you want to be doing? And maybe are there ways to do that work that doesn't involve actually starting anything, which is in fact kind of how I started. I didn't create a nonprofit. I started doing the work and realized it made sense eventually to create a nonprofit. Young adults have this vision of, oh, I know this guy who had an idea and did something, and that something actually impacted my life in a really significant way is wonderful. And I'm so honored to be that model. So much of the reason why I was able to do this had to do with my privilege. But I think that is unfortunately not the reality of the young people and the young adults who are coming out of Rocking the Boat programs. And that's just an important and kind of bitter thing to have to emphasize. But
Well, and I was going to ask you this later, but since it's kind of come up, since you've been doing this for so long, like what's the difference? Do you see a significant difference now in running a nonprofit than back? I mean, certainly social media wasn't a thing
right.
back then, just in terms of all the development that you have to do and promotion. And I mean, on top of all the work that you're doing with these kids, you also, a significant portion of your job is raising money and
Yeah.
being out there. And I mean, I see all the events that you
Yeah.
do. And
I think that it's radically different. I think some of that difference has to do with, two things. I was the life cycle of an organization and the life cycle of a human being. So I was single and was able to run program from, I would, I don't know, show up at 10 o'clock and then run program from 4 to 7:30 and then stay until 10 and keep on working. And sometimes
you aren't old and tired.
something, yes, well, yeah, and sometimes sleeping on the futon in the back, whatever. And now, like, I have to be home at 6 o'clock for dinner I have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old, and this morning my wife Anna is a psychotherapist and she has like 7 a.m. clients, so I got morning drop off duty, and so and then I get back to work at like 9. Yeah, I mean, we started off, our first budget in 1998 was $53,500, and we just passed a 2023 budget of $3.4 million. I've got 20 full-time staff members when we're fully staffed. Yeah, and managing people is more challenging than any other element of the work. As the organization has grown, my role has changed and my priorities have shifted. And certainly a much greater focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And we've gone through a huge organizational process and continue to around that work. And I think we're right in the middle of it. Obviously, the external world, whether it's societal focuses and priorities like on DEI, or technology, obviously, like social media and I mean, just the way that we communicate. And I remember they came up with this new thing called email when we were in college. It wasn't there when we started, and it was when we ended. But so it's and how to use all of these tools most effectively to communicate.
Well, and it's a ton of, I mean, even for the for-profit brands that we primarily do work for, I mean, the amount of content required for social media is overwhelming. Like that's a full-time job, sometimes for multiple full-time employees to generate that amount of content. So while it gives you unparalleled access to the whole world and allows you to get your name out there and promote your fundraising initiatives, it's someone else you have to hire to be making a TikTok or doing whatever to get your name out there.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we have a director of communications that's actually a graduate of the organization who does all of our social media, but as well as our videography and photography and all the content that goes into the posts. And social media, while the bullhorn is there, it doesn't necessarily mean people are listening. And figuring out how to do it in a way that is strategic and doesn't become background noise in people's feeds. And we do a lot of our work is advertising, and we have a product that we are promoting, and whether it's to local kids and families for recruitment purposes, or obviously externally to the broader world for fundraising. Another big shift in Rocking the Boat's kind of funding, or in Rocking the Boat, is our funding. We started out for many years being almost exclusively funded by private foundations, nonprofits that are in the business of giving away money, and we still get a lot of money from foundations. But now probably about 30 to 40% of our income is coming from individuals, 2,000 individual donors a year, and doing it with a great deal of attention and love and follow up. So yeah, it's I had a conversation with a philanthropic advisor, someone who helps us get money from her clients basically, and she said, how are you? Are you? Because I was talking about all the wonderful, amazing, fantastic things happening rocking the boat. She's like, well, how are you doing? How are you feeling about everything? And like amazingly, and maybe it's just masochism, but it's still so compelling to me. Never ever dull, always challenging, often frustrating, but then there are these amazing rewards that come from the work that I'm really fortunate to be. I think there are so many people doing so much amazing work in so many different ways, and it just happens so that I get a lot of recognition for the work that I do, and I get a lot of opportunities like this to actually talk about that, which is fortunate, but also I think enriching for me in a way. So.
Well, and one of the things you shared when we were kind of planning for this podcast, which is so cool, and I'd love you to share a little bit. You were actually at a conference, was it in Washington State? So you have all this knowledge that you kind of, really a lot of it, had to discover on your own by trial and error and doing the thing.
Yeah.
And now you are taking that expertise and sharing it outside of the Bronx, outside of New York, to people across the country.
Yep.
So if you want to share a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think, the other kind of influence that I have is as Rocking the Boat is the largest and most robust and complex youth development through wooden boat building education program in the country by a long shot. At this conference, it's called the Teaching with Small Boats Alliance, and amazingly such a thing exists. I'm on the board of it. They actually, I think, had about 70 different organizations represented, and that was a mix of like 1 or 2 person little tiny operations, and then like the Mystic Seaport Museum, massive organizations that have tiny little boat building education programs. But of the dedicated youth development organizations that are using these mediums, our budget is probably 3 times the next smallest.
So you're like the Paul McCartney there, like when you show up, or people
Right.
like following you around.
And it's a little intense. And so like at this conference, it was a 3-day conference with 1.5 hour long workshop panels, and I was on 7 of them, I think, or 8, facilitated 3 and was a panelist for the others. And people were just constantly asking me questions, and I enjoy doing it. And so there's that. So it was a little exhausting. We are very much being looked at by the rest of the country and beyond. There's some international programs there as well as a model. And we actually have a number of organizations who very sort of explicitly cite us as the model that they are trying to replicate in their own program. In thinking about our next steps, I'm really compelled by that. Is there a way that I can be, whether it's helping either expanding Rocking the Boat by replicating in another place, or helping other organizations to develop programs that are taking from the successes that we've had, and for that matter, from the many failures. What we do is not the straightest line between 2 points. I think the impact of it is huge, although it's often hard to measure, which is another like if we were doing, I don't know, SAT prep or
like it's obvious, like helping you with your college application, or teaching you, tutoring you in math, or
Right. But in fact, in this annual appeal that we put out, the opener was like, it's so challenging to define our success and our outcomes. And for that matter, even if you're doing the softer youth development work, like do it through basketball or something that people already love to do, and throw in some competition, because people just love to win, and in fact, we are very definitively not doing competition. We want to attract people who aren't necessarily feeling competitive, who are probably the oddballs in whatever other environments they're in and want to come to a place where nobody knows anything when they walk in the door and everybody is learning and doing it together. And that's wonderful, but again, always challenging.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're nearing the end of our time, but we always end our podcast with this one question, totally unrelated to anything we talked about so far. But what TV commercial has stuck with you most from your childhood?
So I saw that in the prep email, and so my parents didn't allow me to watch television. So and what television they did was all public. So I did not see many ads at all. The one that immediately jumped to mind was the advertisements for Crazy Eddie, the electronics store. And I don't know if they had them in Long Island too, but in New York City. And it was just it was like Crazy Eddie being totally crazy. And
well, he was in the newspapers too, so that would make sense that you would I remember the pictures of him
right,
in the newspaper, like with his hair and his hands were up, and
and those stood out as whatever. I remember when I was in high school, I used to sneak television, and my parents thought they had outsmarted me by disconnecting the cable, which I would then go behind the TV and connect, and then watch TV for like an hour, and then hear the front door unlock and quickly disconnect it and run into my room.
That's what I always tell. So I always tell other parents who don't let their kids on social media at all. They use it anyway. And then you have no control over what they're doing. And there's no dialogue about it and no opportunity to teach them what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And Lord knows what you were watching.
My dad taught me that, what is it? Beer before liquor?
Yeah, never right? Sicker.
No, liquor before beer.
Nothing
liquor before
beer.
Right, nothing beer. That was from my dad the first time I walked home after drinking, and he was still awake, and he was like, "You've been drinking," but better to manage it than to avoid.
No, Crazy Eddie's a number of the Crazy Eddie has come up with a couple of the East Coast, New York, New Jersey people. Yeah, with us, it's mostly like when we're watching sporting. Football's very big in my house, so that's where we see all the commercials.
Right. Yeah, and we don't have TV. We stream stuff, but we don't watch TV.
Yeah.
There's no sports happening in our house at all.
Well, this was amazing, and thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. And you guys are on Facebook, and you're Rocking the Boat there, all one word, and then Instagram, RTB Bronx. Exactly. And same on Twitter, RTB Bronx. So I can find you on those three.
Those are they. So good to see you and great to talk.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please check back next Monday for a new episode featuring marketing conversations through the lens of influence. I am your host, Danielle Wiley, and this is The Art of Sway.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Gordon Glenister hosts an outstanding podcast called the Influence Global Podcast. Gordon, tell these fine folks what they're going to get when they listen.
We interview some amazing people from all around the world, whether they be influencers, content creators, brands, influencer platforms, anybody involved in the influencer industry. There's some fantastic guests that make a fine listen for you. You can find them on marketingpodcasts.net, or you can also find them on my own website, which is www.gordonglenister.com.
Or, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.